Today we are going to talk about tar, one of the Linux utility. Tar is useful for creating archive files. It also allows us to use different compression algorithms when creating archive files. Tar stands for tape archive. This is very similar to zip files in Windows or Mac if you are familiar with that. Then you might ask why we are using tar over zip. Tar preserves the metadata like permission and ownership, which is very important in Linux environment. That is why it is predominantly used in Linux environment. In addition to that, tar also compresses entire archive as a single unit rather than compressing each files individually, which is what zip does. So because we are compressing the entire archive as a single unit, its compression ratio is better compared to zip files. Tar is generally suitable for creating backup files and for creating a single file for software distribution and things like that. Now let's look at the general structure of tar command. We'll have tar, which is the utility, minus options, then the archive file, then space separated list of files and directories that we want to archive. Tar supports many options. If you want to create a new tar archive, you'll be using -C option. And to specify the archive file, you'll be using -F option with the archive file name. And for extracting an archive that was already created, you'll be using -X option. And if you want to see what is going on, you can enable verbose mode by using -V option. And tar also supports many different compression formats. One of the popular one is called gzip, and to enable gzip, you'll be using -Z option, both while creating and extracting the archive. Similarly, we have J for bzip and capital J for XZ compression. Let's move on to demo and see how we can use tar for some of the common use cases. I have prepared this directory for this demo, and within this directory I have 3 files, file 1, 2, 3, and I have a directory called subdirectory. To create tar archive, we say tar, then we put -C to say that I'm going to create a tar archive, and then we need to specify the archive file that we want to create, and for that we use -F option with the actual file name. Here I'm going to create a tar archive called archive.tar. Then I need to specify the content that should go into this archive file. So I'm going to put file 1, 2 and subdirectory. I'm going to ignore file 3. So now if I press enter, this is going to create an archive file called archive.tar with file 1, 2 and subdirectory as content. You can see here that it has created a file called archive.tar. I'm going to quickly remove this file. I'm going to show you running the same command, but this time I'm going to combine the options. You can see here that I have combined -C and F together. This is allowed because C option is not taking any arguments, but F option is taking an argument. So we can combine them like this. The important thing to note here is that because F option takes archive file name as an argument, it must be the last one here. So if you press enter, the archive file is created. Normally in Linux, when you execute any command, if you don't see any output, usually that is a good news. So in this case, I have not seen any output, which means I can assume that the command has run successfully. So if I look at the content of this directory again, we can see that the same archive.tar file is created. I'm going to clear the screen, and again I'm going to remove the file that we just created. This time I'm going to create the same archive file, but I'm going to add an additional option called V. V means verbose. So when we use verbose mode, we'll be able to see what is going into that archive file that we are creating. We can see that it is creating an archive file with 2 files, file 1 and 2, and all the content from the subdirectory. The subdirectory has a file called file 4. And all of them are included in our archive file called archive.tar. And you can see that the file is created here. Now, the file is created, but how do you know what is in this file? To see what is in this file without extracting, we can use another option called T. So we can say tar -T, and we again need to specify the archive file name that we want to see the content of. So for that we need to use F option. Then I'm going to specify the actual file name that I want to view. Now if I press enter, it will list the content of this particular archive file. You can see that this is exactly what we expected. It has file 1, 2 and the subdirectory. Now let's look at how we can extract this file content into another folder. In order to extract, we can use -X option. We can say tar -X and we also need to specify the file that we are extracting. So we need to use F option and the archive file name. Then if I just run this command, it is going to overwrite my current directory content. I don't want to do that. I want to extract this into a separate folder. So for that, we can use another option called -C. Capital C means changing the directory or changing the working directory. Then I can specify another folder. In this case, I'm going to specify that it is going to be a subfolder called result. Now, if I run this, we might get an error saying that the subfolder doesn't exist. So I'm going to create that folder now and run the same command again. Now this has run successfully. We could also use verbose mode, but in this case I haven't. But if I look at the content of result directory, we can see that it includes the files and folders from the archive.tar. Now let me do some cleanup, then we'll see how to use compression. So I have deleted the result folder and I have also deleted the archive file that we have created earlier. Now we are going to create tar archive, but this time we are going to compress it using gzip compression. Now I have gone back to the command that we used earlier to create tar archive, but this time I want to compress the archive using gzip compression. And to compress the archive using gzip compression, we need to use z option. Remember, F has to be the last option, so I put z just before F. And the convention is to use .tar.gz as the extension for gzip compression. So let's change the extension as well. Now if I press enter, it will create a gzipped tar archive called archive.tar.gz. You can see here that it has done that. Let me quickly create an archive without any compression and compare the sizes. You can see here that we have two files. The first one is archive.tar and the second one is archive.tar.gz. The second file, which is the compressed file, is much smaller in size compared to the file which is not compressed. And similarly, if you want to extract gzip compressed file, you need to use the z as one of the option when you are extracting. So here is the command we used earlier for extracting archive.tar file. I'm going to change this to extract archive.tar.gz. Because this uses gzip compression, we need to use z as one of the options. And we also need to change the file that we want to extract. As you can see here, archive file is extracted into this folder called result. Tar supports many compression formats. Some of the popular ones include bzip2 compression, and for that you need to use J as an option instead of Z. And another popular one is called XZ, and for that you need to use capital J as one of the options instead of Z. We only scratched the surface of what tar can do. It is very powerful Linux utility with a lot of options at our disposal. You can learn more about it by going into the man page of this tar utility. That's the end of this video. Thank you.